Before we begin, ask yourself one simple question. Where are you right now? Is it midnight? Are you already in bed, under warm blankets, listening in the dark? Or maybe you're on your couch, the city outside your window quiet, your phone screen glowing softly in your hand. Whatever your place, whatever your time, take a moment to check in, because tonight you're about to be transported somewhere very few people have truly imagined. A place beneath the surface of history. A forgotten world beneath the streets. And before we go there, make sure you've subscribed to this channel right now, because once we start this journey, you'll want to come back for the next one. Now, close your eyes for a second, breathe slowly, and picture this. It's London, 1940, but not the London of postcards and parades. This is a different London, a version few people talk about in Fultha, London of sirens, shadows, and shelter life. The world above is about to disappear under waves of falling bombs, and you are not watching from a distance. You are living inside it. You are clutching your small suitcase with trembling hands, standing on a cold pavement under a blacked-out sky, while hundreds of other people shuffle around you in silence. You can't see their faces properly. Everyone's features are blurred by darkness and fear. You can hear the first notes of the air raid siren cutting through the cold night air, a wailing cry that rises and falls, telling you that death is already on its way. But here's the part that most people don't understand. Surviving the Blitz wasn't just about dodging bombs. It was about learning how to live in a suspended world, where life continued in the strangest ways, while the city crumbled overhead. Tonight, you're going to step into that world, not as a tourist, not as a distant observer, but as someone who is there. Someone who must descend the steps into a bomb shelter and figure out how to survive the night, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, quietly. The shelter isn't glamorous. It's not romantic. It's not even safe. But it's the only option you have. Imagine your feet stepping onto the first cold stone stair. You hold onto a metal railing, slick with condensation. The air smells like wet clothes, boiled cabbage, and the faint metallic scent of fear. You move slowly, pressed shoulder to shoulder with strangers, some of whom you know, most of whom you don't. The deeper you go, the less you can hear the city above. The bus engines fade. The shop shutters being pulled down fade. But the siren never really fades from your mind. It's still there, looping quietly inside your head. At the bottom of the stairs, you find yourself in a tunnel that used to be part of the London Underground. But tonight, it's something else entirely. A village beneath the earth. A strange community stitched together by fear and routine. Families stake out territories with blankets. Mothers soothe babies in corners. Elderly couples sit on suitcases. Above you, the Luftwaffe is flying in tight formations, engines humming like mechanical wasps. Somewhere far off, anti-aircraft guns are firing. You know this by the vibration in the walls, like a low growl moving through your bones. A woman near you whispers to herself, counting seconds between the sounds of bombs. 4, 5, 6. Then a distant rumble, muffled by layers of earth and concrete. The shelter shakes softly, like a massive, sleeping animal. And here's the first secret of shelter life. People don't just hide here, they live here. Some people bring board games. Others bring diaries. Children play with buttons and scraps of cloth, making up strange underground games, while their parents pretend not to listen to the walls vibrating with each explosion. There's a man named Mr. Dalloway. He was a teacher before the war. Now, he reads Shakespeare aloud to whoever will listen, his voice steady even when his hands tremble. There's Mrs. Keene, who sets up a tiny makeshift kitchen in a corner every night, heating tins of soup over a smuggled spirit lamp, even though it's against the rules. And then there are the people who simply sit, staring into the middle distance, eyes half closed, waiting for dawn. But sometimes dawn never comes, not for everyone. Outside, entire streets vanish in seconds, whole neighborhoods reduced to rubble. You don't know if your house is still standing. You don't know if your neighbor's house is still standing. You just know you're here, underground, breathing stale air and trying not to think about it. Time moves differently in the shelter. Minutes stretch into hours. People measure the night not by clocks, but by the pattern of sounds overhead, the whistle of falling bombs, the crack of impact, the groan of buildings collapsing. And yet, in this strange, claustrophobic world, life goes on in unexpected ways. People tell jokes. Someone passes around a tin of sweets. A teenage boy scribbles secret love notes in a small notebook, hiding them under his blanket. A woman braids her daughter's hair in the dim light of a candle stub, her hands steady even as her heart races. And then there are the stories that nobody talks about openly, the whispered rumors of people disappearing into the shelter tunnels, never to come back out. Strange shapes glimpsed in the darkness, sounds that don't match the pattern of footsteps. Some people say it's just the stress of war playing tricks on the mind. Others aren't so sure. But everyone agrees on one thing. Life underground changes you. It turns you into something you weren't before. Not better, not worse, just different. There's a certain silence that grows in places like this, a silence beneath the noise. A hush that settles over people when they realize they're part of something bigger than themselves, something terrifying and ordinary at the same time. And tonight, you're part of it. You're lying on a hard bunk, wrapped in a coat instead of a blanket, because you left in a hurry. Your stomach growls softly, but you ignore it. Hunger is just another sound now, like the distant thud of bombs, or the drip of water from the tunnel ceiling. Your eyes flicker closed, but your mind stays alert, tuned to every creak, every whisper, every sigh. This is not just a night. It's a test of patience, of endurance, of what it means to be human when the world above has stopped making sense. And as you lie there, wondering if you'll ever see the sky again, something strange happens. You start to relax. Not because the danger is gone, but because you've accepted it. There's nothing left to do but wait, to listen, to breathe, and maybe, just maybe, to fall asleep, not from exhaustion, but from a deep, strange calm that comes when you realize you're part of history now, a living witness to the quiet, terrifying, beautiful nights beneath the Blitz. In the next part, we'll go deeper into this world, deeper into the lives of the people who made the shelters their home for weeks, even months. We'll meet the secret storytellers, the accidental heroes, and the strange rituals that kept the human spirit alive in the darkest hours of the war. Stay with me. This is only the beginning. The night deepens, but you are still awake, half dreaming, half listening, stretched out on a bunk bed in the dim belly of a London shelter. The air around you has thickened, not from smoke, but from the closeness of hundreds of sleeping, breathing bodies. There's a strange rhythm to it, all the drip of water from the ceiling, the occasional cough echoing down the tunnel, and the dull, distant thud of bombs rearranging the city's streets above. But tonight, you'll discover something that most people never realize about these shelters. The real danger wasn't just outside, it was inside, too, hidden beneath layers of politeness, routine, and whispered smiles. Tonight, we'll go deeper into the hidden life of a Blitz shelter, deeper than any textbook dares to go. Welcome to the unofficial village of the underground. The shelter isn't just a place to sleep, it's an entire world with its quiet rituals, social rules, and secret dramas. Imagine Aldwych Station again, the disused tube stop where you found your bunk for the night. By daylight, it's just a cold, tiled tunnel, but at night, it transforms into something far stranger, suspended world where time freezes and people invent new ways to survive, not just physically but emotionally. Look around you. On one side, a woman carefully lays out her family's meager possessions like a ritual: 3 enamel mugs, a cracked alarm clock, and a knitted shawl folded perfectly, even though there's no privacy here. No walls to hide behind. Her name is Mrs. Talbot, and she's known in this shelter for her strange habit. Before every air raid, she whispers the names of every street in her neighborhood, like a spell to keep them safe. No one interrupts her, they just let her whisper. On the other side, a group of teenage boys sits in a circle, passing around a deck of sticky playing cards. They're supposed to be keeping watch for firebombs if the all-clear comes early. But instead, they tell each other ghost stories, their voices low but urgent, as if the telling of the story is more important than the war outside. And maybe it is. Fear takes many forms here, and sometimes it's easier to fear something else, something imaginary, than to focus on the whine of a bomber engine slicing through the night sky. A few bunks away, old Mr. Hemmings sits with his back against the cold wall, humming a tune no one recognizes. His wife died in the first week of the Blitz, crushed under rubble while she baked bread in their kitchen. Now he hums, night after night, a song that might be for her, or might be just for himself. No one asks, no one needs to. In the underground village, people learn to live side by side with each other's ghosts. But here's where things get truly strange. As the days turn into weeks, the shelters begin to develop their unspoken social codes rules no government ever wrote down. There are territories marked by nothing but a blanket draped between bunks, gestures so subtle you might miss them. A glance that says this is our corner, a shuffle of feet that says don't come closer. The polite smiles hide something deeper, a constant, quiet negotiation of space, food, and sanity. Favors are traded like currency. A cigarette for a clean handkerchief. A bar of soap for the promise of a turn on the upper bunk next week. There are no laws here, only agreements, whispered in corners where the lantern light doesn't reach. And underneath all of this, something else is happening, something no one likes to admit. People are changing. Time underground does that to you. It rewrites your sense of normal. After a while, the world above starts to feel like a dream, and the tunnel becomes the reality. Some people sleep better down here than they ever did in their own homes, despite the danger. Others find themselves forgetting what day it is, or what month. A woman near you keeps a tiny notebook, writing the same sentence over and over. Still here, still breathing, still here. Her name is Evelyn Marsh, and she used to work in a library before the war. Now her job is survival, but it's not just the boredom or the fear that changes people, it's the intimacy. Imagine living night after night, just inches away from strangers, hearing them breathe, snore, and cry in their sleep. You hear confessions whispered in the dark, see secret handshakes passed between friends, and notice the way people lean just a little closer to the ones they trust when the sirens start. In the shelter, privacy is the first casualty of war. And this closeness leads to something unexpected. New relationships, new alliances, even forbidden romances. There are people here who met underground and never leave each other's side, even when the all-clear sounds. There are also arguments quiet but sharp over space, over belongings, over rumors of what's happening in the city above. And here's the secret nobody talks about. Sometimes people don't want to leave the shelter, even when it's safe. There's a strange comfort in the routine of it, the sameness of the tunnel walls, the predictability of the air raid schedule. Above ground, everything changes too fast. Down here, everything stays the same. But of course, not everything is calm. There are moments when panic flares like a sudden match in the dark. One night, a man named Arthur wakes screaming from a nightmare, convinced the roof is about to collapse. His cries wake half the shelter, sending ripples of fear through the bunks. It takes nearly 20 minutes to calm him down, and even then, the tremble in his hands never quite leaves. Some people start carrying Lucky Charms, a child's toy, a photograph, a piece of ribbon to ward off fear. Others invent rituals, tapping 3 times on the metal bed frame before sleep, or refusing to eat until they've recited a particular line from a poem. These small acts become anchors in a sea of uncertainty. And then there are the stranger stories, the ones whispered when people think no one is listening. Stories of shadows moving at the far end of the tunnel where no one sleeps. Stories of voices echoing back when no one spoke. Some say it's just the mind playing tricks, warped by exhaustion. Others aren't so sure. But everyone keeps the lanterns burning just a little longer after those tales are told. Above you, the bombs fall closer tonight. The ground shakes. Dust sifts down from the ceiling like powdered sugar. But no one screams, no one runs. Instead, people tighten their blankets, hold their loved ones closer, and stare into the middle distance, waiting for the tremors to pass. This is life now, a strange half-life between danger and safety, between despair and strange, stubborn hope. And as you lie there, listening, you realize something. You're not just surviving this night. You're becoming part of a hidden chapter of history, a chapter that most people will never fully understand. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. But before the night ends, there's something else you need to know something about. The people in this shelter, something that will change how you see this story forever. In the next part, we'll go deeper into the personal secrets of shelter life, the hidden romances, the quiet betrayals, and the strange underground confessions that reveal what people become when the world above no longer matters. Stay with me. The night is long, and the story is just beginning. The shelter has its heartbeat now. You can feel it in the rhythm of breath around you, in the soft shuffle of blankets, in the creak of old iron bed frames shifting under restless bodies. It's not just a place anymore, it's a living thing, pulsing quietly beneath the ruined streets of London. And as you lie there tonight, with your eyes half open in the dim glow of a lantern, you begin to realize something else. The real story of the Blitz shelters isn't just about fear or survival. It's about what happens to people when the rules of ordinary life are stripped away, when the ceiling becomes the earth and the sky is something you only imagine. The shelters turned Londoners into something new, not soldiers, not victims, but strange, in-between creatures, hovering in the twilight of civilization. And tonight, we're going deeper into that world, into the unspoken confessions and secret moments that kept people human in the middle of chaos. Look around you. The tunnel is packed, but in the semi-darkness, you notice things most people wouldn't. A woman named Clara sits cross-legged near the wall, writing letters she never intends to send. Her fiancé's missing, lost somewhere in the rubble of a collapsed building 2 weeks ago. She doesn't know if he's alive or dead, but every night she writes to him anyway, folding the paper carefully and placing it in a small tin box she keeps under her bedroll. She never cries, she just writes. And strangely, that ritual keeps her breathing. 2 bunks over, a young couple shares a blanket, not because they're married, but because they met here, under the city. And their lives are stitched together now in ways neither of them expected. Their names are George and Lily. George was a bus conductor before the war. Lily worked in a dress shop. Now they're sharing whispered promises beneath the steady rumble of distant bombs. No one judges them. Down here, the usual rules don't apply. People find comfort where they can, however they can. Some call it a scandal, others call it survival. In truth, it's both. And then there's the case of Mr. Finch, a quiet man who keeps a notebook filled with lists not of groceries or tasks, but of people. He writes down the names of everyone in the shelter each night, recording who's here, who's missing, and who might not come back. Some people find it creepy, others find it comforting, but no one stops him. His notebook is like a map of the invisible community forming beneath the ground. Every person has a place in it, even you. A small child nearby, barely 5 years old, clutches a ragged teddy bear with one ear missing. Her name is Rosie, and she's already learned how to tell the difference between the sound of a high-explosive bomb and an incendiary. Her mother jokes that Rosie will grow up to be an expert in acoustics, but her eyes say something else, something hollow and distant. This is what war does to childhood. It teaches lessons no one wants to learn. And here's the part that history books leave out. The shelters weren't always safe. Sometimes the bombs hit too close. Sometimes the earth shook so hard that cracks appeared in the tunnel walls. There were nights when water leaked in from broken pipes. Nights when rumors spread like wildfire, whispers of gas leaks, structural collapses, or even strange diseases passed from one bunk to another. Fear wasn't always about bombs. Sometimes it was about the air itself, about the possibility that this underground refuge could become a tomb. But people stayed anyway. Where else could they go? Outside, firestorms lit up the sky. Entire streets disappeared. Families walked out of shelters in the morning, to find their homes reduced to smoldering piles of brick and glass. And yet, they came back underground the next night, because survival wasn't just about staying alive, it was about staying connected. The shelter became a ritual, a routine, a strange comfort in the face of chaos. Inside, people told stories, not because they wanted to pass the time, but because storytelling gave shape to the darkness. Mr. Dalloway still recites Shakespeare by lantern light, his voice steady even when his hands tremble. Sometimes he changes, the words slipping in jokes or local references to make the crowd laugh. Laughter down here is like currency, valuable and always shared carefully. There are nights when the laughter turns into singing, soft at first, then louder as people forget their fear for a moment. Songs from before the war, songs from childhood, nonsense songs invented on the spot. It doesn't matter. The sound fills the tunnel, echoing off the cold tiles, wrapping around the sleepers like an invisible blanket. But beneath the singing, beneath the laughter, there's something else's silent current of secrets. People confess things in the shelter that they would never say above ground. Mrs. Keene, the woman who makes tea in the corner, once whispered to a friend that she sometimes hopes her house is gone, just so she won't have to clean it again. A man named Harold admits, late one night, that he's not writing letters to his wife. She died last year, but he still writes to her every day, describing the shelter, telling her about the people he meets. A teenage boy named Alfie tells his best friend that he's terrified not of bombs, but of the moment when the war ends, because then he'll have to find out who he is without it. These aren't the kinds of things people say in daylight, but in the shelter, where sleep comes in fragments and dreams bleed into waking, the mind loosens its grip. People become raw versions of themselves. Truth leaks out, and sometimes so do lies. There are stories of theft, a chocolate bar going missing, a tin of biscuits quietly disappearing from someone's bag. People suspect each other, but never confront. It's easier to pretend it was a mistake, to preserve the fragile peace of the shelter. There are also whispers of love affairs, of married men sneaking into corners with women who aren't their wives, of secret meetings behind the blankets strung up for privacy. Some people judge coup, others don't. The war has changed everyone, and what happens underground stays underground, except when it doesn't. One night, a fight breaks out between two men over something small, a place in line for the chemical toilet, perhaps, or a comment said too sharply. Voices rise, a lantern is knocked over. For a moment, panic surges through the tunnel like a wave, but then it passes. The lantern is relit, apologies are mumbled. People return to their bunks, eyes down, hearts racing quietly. This is life now, constant balancing act between civility and chaos, between the need for comfort, and through it all, the bombs keep falling. Outside, the sky is an unnatural color, orange from fires, black from smoke, silver from searchlights sweeping the clouds. But inside the shelter, it's always the same. Dim light whispers the smell of damp clothes and human breath, and you're still here, listening, breathing, becoming part of a history that most people will never know fully, because the real Blitz wasn't just about sirens and rubble. It was about nights like this long, nights filled with tiny human moments that no one will ever write on a memorial plaque. In the next part, We'll explore what happens when the shelter becomes more than just a refuge, when it becomes a new kind of society, complete with rules, roles, and quiet revolutions. Stay with me. The story isn't over, not by a long shot. Night, another descent into the underworld. By now, the staircase leading into the shelter feels like part of your body, each step memorized by muscle and mind. The cold handrail, the chipped tiles, the familiar hum of nervous conversation as people shuffle inside with their blankets and bags. It's strange how quickly humans adapt, how something terrifying can become routine if it happens often enough. The Blitz isn't just an event anymore. It's a lifestyle, a nightly ritual of fear and survival. And beneath the streets of London, something else is happening, something most history books never bother to mention. The shelters have started to evolve. They're no longer just emergency spaces to wait out the bombs. They're becoming miniature societies, each one with its own unspoken rules, its leaders, its outcasts, its tiny revolutions. You see it tonight more clearly than ever. As you find your usual corner in Aldwych Station, you notice the same faces, the same quiet rituals beginning again. Mr. Finch is already there, his notebook open, scribbling names as if he's the official record keeper of this subterranean village. No one asked him to do it, but no one stops him either. His lists give people a strange sense of order in a world without it. Mrs. Talbot mutters her protective prayers, naming every street she can remember, as if her voice could hold the city together by sheer will. And yet, something is different. Tonight, the shelter has shifted, just slightly, in ways only careful eyes can see. There's a hierarchy, forming a subtle layering of who gets what, who sits where, who speaks first. The upper bunks are now claimed by those with bad backs or important jobs. The lower bunks, near the cold floor, are left for the less fortunate. Families with small children band together, forming protective circles. Single men and women drift to the edges, finding corners where they can pretend not to be alone. And then there are the invisible trades happening all around you. A piece of chocolate was exchanged for a hot water bottle. A clean pair of socks was traded for a few pages of newspaper to use as a blanket supplement. Someone offers to share a pillow in exchange for the promise of a story, preferably a funny one, to chase away the heavy air. No money changes hands. It's all based on trust, need, and the quiet calculations of the desperate. You realize you're watching the birth of a new kind of economy, one not measured in pounds or shillings, but in comfort, kindness, and scarcity. But it's not all peaceful. Power struggles are emerging, soft and polite, but unmistakable. Mr. Dalloway, the school teacher, has become the unofficial master of ceremonies, deciding when the stories start and when the lights dim. People listen to him because he's calm, steady, and has a voice that cuts through the fear. But there are whispers that he's becoming too controlling, choosing favorites, deciding who gets to sit near the heater on the coldest nights. The heater, a small kerosene contraption hidden in the corner, has become a symbol of privilege. Those allowed near it sleep warmer, breathe easier. Those pushed away shiver under thin blankets, wondering who made the decision and why. And yet, no one confronts him directly. Conflict is too dangerous here. The shelter is a fragile place, held together by politeness, by shared suffering, by the quiet agreement that everyone will pretend things are fine, even when they're not. But under the surface, tensions bubble. There are rumors of theft again. Someone's tin of condensed milk is missing, a luxury item in wartime. Fingers point silently, eyes narrow, but no one speaks aloud. To accuse is to fracture the illusion of unity. Better to let it go, to swallow the anger, to pretend. And then there's the issue of space. Each family claims their patch of floor or bed, but the borders shift nightly. A rolled blanket here, a suitcase moved slightly to the left, a child sleeping a little closer to the walkway than usual. Territory is defended quietly, with looks and gestures rather than words. But make no mistake, is defended. One night, an elderly man named Mr. Kent tries to claim an empty bunk he believes is unoccupied. Within minutes, 3 different people explain, softly but firmly, that the bunk belongs to Mrs. Evans, who has gone to use the toilet. She'll be back. She always comes back. Mr. Kent shuffles away, embarrassed, muttering apologies. He won't try again. Ownership here is not about legal rights. It's about ritual, repetition, the memory of who usually sleeps where. Break the pattern, and the whole structure trembles. But not everyone follows the rules. There are quiet rebels, 2 people, who push against the new social order, sometimes out of desperation, just to remind themselves they still have a choice. A teenage girl named Mabel, usually silent, decides tonight is the night she'll sleep in the middle of the walkway, directly under the main lantern. People step around her, annoyed but careful. No one knows why she does it. Maybe she wants the light. Maybe she's tired of hiding in corners. Maybe she just wants to remind everyone that the rules are made up. And then there's Alfie, the boy who usually draws pictures on scraps of paper. Tonight, he sketched a map of the shelter, not just the physical layout, but the social one. He's drawn lines showing where families cluster, where singles sleep, and where the unspoken no-go zones are. He shows it to you, eyes sparkling. It's like a new London, he says, and you realize he's right. This isn't just a place to wait anymore. It's a society, with all the Massinses, beauty, and cruelty that comes with it. And like any society, it has secrets. There's talk of a hidden room at the far end of the tunnel, behind a locked maintenance door. Some say it's used by railway staff. Others whisper that a small group of people have taken it over for themselves, an elite club within the shelter, hoarding extra supplies, keeping warm while the rest shiver. No one knows for sure, but the door is always closed, and that's enough to fuel the rumors. Meanwhile, above you, the bombs continue to fall. You can feel them through the floor, the soft shudder of impact, the dust trickling down from the ceiling like a warning. But down here, life goes on. People braid each other's hair. They play cards. They argue quietly about politics, about rationing, about whether or not the Americans will finally join the war. And through it all, the hierarchy solidifies, the rules becoming tighter even as the air grows thinner. It's human nature, you realize. Even in the face of destruction, people build systems. They create order, even if that order is unfair. It's safer than chaos. But what happens when the system starts to crack? What happens when someone decides not to follow the rules anymore? That's where the real danger lies, not just in the bombs, but in the moments when the fragile social fabric begins to tear. In the next part, we'll explore the breaking points, the quiet revolts, the whispered betrayals, and the strange events that tested the limits of life in the shelters. Stay with me. The night is still long, and the story is only getting stranger. The deeper you go into this life beneath the streets, the more you realize that shelter living isn't just about physical survival. It's about navigating invisible lines, soft borders drawn in silence, and the quiet negotiations of human behavior under pressure. Tonight, you sense a shift in the air, something subtle but unmistakable. The shelter is holding its breath, waiting for something to happen, though. No one knows exactly what. You can feel it in the way people glance sideways instead of looking directly at each other, in the way hands hover over personal belongings just a moment longer, in the way conversations trail off into nothing mid-sentence. The rules of the shelter society have been stretching, bending, and reshaping themselves with each passing night, and now, slowly, they're beginning to crack. Tonight begins like every other. You arrive at Aldwych Station before dusk, descending the stairs with your usual group, clutching your bundle of possessions. The same faces nod at you. Mr. Finch with his notebook, Mrs. Talbot whispering her prayers, George and Lily holding hands in their corner. The air smells the same, sweat, wool, old stone, but the mood is different. People are quieter, their smiles thinner. You find your spot and settle in, but your ears stay alert, tuned to the murmurs circulating through the tunnel like ghostly echoes. The rumor about the locked maintenance room has grown louder. Some claim to have seen extra blankets being carried through the narrow side door by shelter wardens late at night. Others swear they've heard laughter coming from behind the door. Strange, muffled joy that feels wrong in this world of rationing and restraint. No one knows what's real anymore. Fear blurs the lines between truth and imagination, but the seed has been planted. And once a secret starts to grow in a place like this, it's almost impossible to stop. Tonight, the first quiet rebellion begins. It's not dramatic, no shouting, no fists raised, just a small decision by a few people to stop following the unofficial rules. It starts when Mabel, the teenage girl who once slept under the lantern, decides she's had enough of the hierarchy. She refuses to take her usual spot on the cold floor near the tunnel wall. Instead, she drags her blanket into the center of the shelter and lays it out in a space usually reserved for passing through. People stare but say nothing. Then Alfie, the boy with the hand-drawn maps, joins her. He sets down his belongings next to hers, quietly claiming a new space. It's a statement without words. The rules are imaginary, and we don't have to follow them. Others watch nervously. Some whisper. A few older shelter residents shake their heads, muttering about respect and order. But no one stops them. The balance has shifted, and it's too late to pull it back now. Meanwhile, the air outside vibrates with distant bombers, but inside, the real tension is human. The small social order, built over weeks, is beginning to wobble. People who once shared tea and stories now eye each other suspiciously. Tiny slight someone stepping on a blanket edge, someone taking too long in line for the toilet become sources of quiet fury. And beneath it all, the question of the locked door festers. What's happening in that room? Who's inside? Why are some people warmer, better fed, and better rested than the rest? The shelter has always had its leaders, Mr. Dalloway, the school teacher, Mr. Finch, with his lists but leadership, is only respected when it feels fair. Now, fairness feels like a fading memory, and when fairness disappears, rebellion grows. Tonight, after the lanterns dim and most people pretend to sleep, a small group decides to find out the truth. Mabel, Alfie, and a few others slip away from their usual bunks, creeping toward the maintenance door at the far end of the tunnel. Their feet make almost no sound, trained by weeks of shelter living to move silently, to disturb no one. They press their ears to the door. There is sound on the other side, soft voices, the clink of cups, perhaps even music, though that seems impossible. In a city at war, where did music come from? Their hearts race. They exchange looks. Someone tries the handle, but it's locked, just like always. Still, the seed of defiance has been planted. They don't trust the shelter leaders anymore, and soon others will feel the same. The next day, nothing is said openly, but the atmosphere has changed again. People speak in code now, asking innocent questions that mean something else. Did you sleep well? Translates to, what do you know? Isn't it warm tonight? Means, who has access to the extra blankets? The whispers spread like fog, curling into every corner of the shelter. Meanwhile, the regular life of the underground village continues. Mothers hush crying babies. Old men play cards. A woman knits by lantern light, her needles clicking like clockwork. But underneath everything is shifting. The structure of the shelter society is bending under the weight of suspicion and unspoken tension. The strange thing is, no one wants to break the system completely. People need the structure, even if it's flawed. It keeps the fear manageable. Chaos is always worse. But how much inequality can people bear before they stop pretending? That's the question hanging in the air tonight, heavier than the dampness seeping through the tunnel walls. Outside, the bombs continue their terrible rhythm. The city above burns, reshapes, and crumbles. But inside, the shelter is experiencing its quiet collapse, social implosion, far less visible, but just as dangerous. The leaders sense it too. Mr. Dalloway tries to restore calm, reading aloud from a battered copy of Great Expectations. His voice is steady, but his eyes flick nervously toward the maintenance door. Mr. Finch tightens his grip on his notebook, writing faster, as if recording the names will somehow hold the community together. But names on paper won't fix this. Something has to give, and soon it will. Because tonight, for the first time, someone leaves the shelter in the middle of an air raid. A woman named Sarah Evans, usually quiet and obedient, packs her bag, folds her blanket, and climbs the stairs into the night while the bombs still fall. No one stops her. They watch, silent, as she disappears into the darkness. Her act is not just dangerous, it's symbolic. She's chosen chaos over control, the unknown over the predictable discomfort of shelter life. And that terrifies everyone more than the bombs. What if more people leave? What if the whole fragile system unravels? These questions hang in the stale air as you drift toward uneasy sleep, heart pounding softly, mind full of images you can't quite shake. In the next part, we'll find out what happens when the shelter reaches its breaking point, when trust dissolves completely, and people must decide whether to cling to the rules or rewrite them entirely. Stay with me. The night isn't over yet, and neither is the story. By the time the next night falls, the shelter has become something else entirely, not just a place of refuge, but a cracked mirror reflecting the deepest parts of human nature. The social structure that once held the underground world together is starting to collapse quietly, like a building losing its foundation, one brick at a time. And as you step back into Aldwych Station with your blanket folded over your arm, you can feel the difference in the air. The usual murmurs are quieter, more suspicious. People glance sideways instead of smiling. The same bunk arrangements still exist, but they no longer feel stable. It's like watching a house of cards slowly sway, knowing that any breath might send it crashing down. And tonight, something is about to happen that will change everything. The maintenance door, the one behind which whispers of secret luxuries have been swirling for weeks, is about to be forced open. But before we get there, you need to understand just how fragile this place has become. Over the last few nights, people have stopped pretending they trust each other. Conversations are clipped, jokes fall flat. The warmth that once filled the shelter, the shared songs, the whispered stories, has faded into a dull routine of survival. Even Mr. Dalloway's readings no longer command attention. His voice, once steady as stone, now sounds like paper tearing in the wind. People fidget, eyes darting toward the locked door at the far end of the tunnel, the one that's become a symbol of division. What's behind it? Why do the wardens disappear through it at night? Rumors have grown teeth. Some say there's extra food stockpiled inside. Others claim it's nothing more than a break room for shelter staff, though no one has seen what's in there to prove it. And then there are the wilder theories, the whispered nonsense about secret parties, hidden radios tuned to German broadcasts, or even underground black markets for stolen ration books. None of it makes sense, but all of it feels true in the half-dream state of life beneath the bombs. Tonight, Alfie has had enough. He's the boy who once drew innocent maps of the shelter layout, but now his maps include escape routes and question marks where the door stands. His eyes are sharper, his voice lower, more serious, and tonight he decides to act. He gathers Mabel and 3 others, George, Lily, and an older man named Harris, who used to be a locksmith before the war. They don't make a speech. They don't announce their plan. They simply wait until most people are half asleep, their bodies curling under thin blankets, their minds hovering between exhaustion and restless worry. Then they slip away, their footsteps muffled by the heavy air and the worn soles of their shoes. They reach the door. Harris kneels, his fingers tracing the edges of the lock, his mind calculating possibilities like a craftsman remembering old habits. His hands are steady, even as the ground vibrates with the distant impact of bombs. Outside, buildings are crumbling, but inside, something far more delicate is breaking. The door clicks open. Slowly, silently, it swings inward, and what they find inside isn't what they expected. No secret parties, no stockpiles of food. Instead, the room is dimly lit by a single electric bulb hooked up to an emergency generator. There are supplies here, blankets, yes, and a small pile of canned goods, but not enough to justify the rumors. What's more unsettling is the bedrolls lined up neatly along one wall. 5 of them, extra pillows, a small table with a pot of tea still steaming, as if the people who had been here had left only seconds ago. There's a radio to its dial glowing faintly in the dark, tuned not to German broadcasts, but to the BBC Home Service. the same as everyone else listens to. So why the secrecy? Why the locked door? The truth is simpler and more brutal than any of the fantasies whispered in the shelter. The shelter wardens, those meant to protect and organize, have carved out a space for themselves, a pocket of comfort inside the discomfort. They've hoarded small luxuries, not to sell or betray, but simply to escape the crushing sameness of communal suffering. They've stolen privacy, warmth, and silence for themselves, while the rest of the shelter shivers in the cold noise of collective fear. It's not treason, it's not sabotage, it's just human, and somehow that makes it worse. Alfie stares at the room, his jaw tightening. Mabel's eyes narrowed, her hands balling into fists at her sides. No one says a word. They close the door quietly, locking it again from the inside so no one else will find them. For the first time, they've seen the truth of survival. It's not about fairness. It's about who can carve out a corner of comfort, no matter the cost. They return to their bunks, hearts heavy, minds racing. Do they tell the others? Do they pretend they never saw it? And if they do tell, what happens next? The answers hang in the air, like dust after a building collapse too heavy to breathe, too thick to ignore. The next day, the shelter feels different. Again, there's a brittle edge to every interaction. People's smiles are thinner. Their eyes dart more quickly. Rumors of the unlocked door begin to leak out, though no one knows who started them. Some people deny everything. Others demand answers. Mr. Dalloway tries to smooth things over, reading aloud from Dickens as usual, but no one listens. The words don't matter anymore. The illusion is broken. And then, in the middle of the night, something happens that pushes everything over the edge. A fight breaks out, not just a whispered argument, but a full-blown physical clash between two men who accuse each other of stealing food. Their shouts echo down the tunnel, louder than the bombs above. Fists fly. A lantern tips, shattering on the floor. For a terrifying moment, flames lick at the edges of a blanket before someone smothers it with their coat. The shelter plunges into darkness. Hearts pound in the blackness. Breaths come fast and shallow. The fragile social fabric has torn wide, open. When the lights are relit, nothing feels the same. People avoid each other's eyes. Some pack their things quietly, preparing to leave the shelter in the morning, even if it means facing the bombs outside. Others cling tighter to their routines, doubling down on small rituals to pretend nothing has changed. But deep down, everyone knows the truth. The shelter isn't a sanctuary anymore. It's a pressure cooker, a place where fear, scarcity, and human weakness collide in ways no one can fully control. And yet they stay, because what choice is there? Outside, the city burns. Inside, people drift into uneasy sleep, their dreams haunted not by enemy planes, but by the faces of their neighbors. In the next part, we'll explore what happens when people realize there's no going back, when the shelter becomes not just a refuge, but a permanent way of life. Stay with me. The night is far from over. Morning comes, but in the shelter, you don't notice. There's no sunrise beneath the city streets, no change in the air, no birdsong to mark the passing of night into day. Time here is a flat circle, looping endlessly between whispers and silence, between the rumble of bombs and the awkward hush of human breath pressed too close together. You stir in your bunk, your body sore from sleeping on cold stone and thin blankets. your mind foggy from dreams you can't remember. But one thing is clear. Everything has changed. The shelter is no longer just a temporary refuge. It's becoming something permanent, something deeper, a strange new kind of life that doesn't feel like life at all. You sit up slowly, watching the others around you. Their faces are familiar but distant now, eyes glazed with exhaustion and the quiet weight of realization. The fight last night, the lantern breaking, the shouts, the sudden flash of flames has left a scar on the shelter's soul. No one talks about it directly, but the tension is thicker than ever, like smoke that won't clear. People avoid eye contact. They move carefully, as if walking through a room filled with invisible tripwires. And above all, they pretend they slept well, pretend they aren't angry, pretend they aren't terrified of each other. The illusion of community, once held together by shared cups of tea and whispered stories, is now paper-thin, and yet the shelter continues. It has to. There's nowhere else to go. Outside London is still under siege. The streets are lined with rubble, the air choked with dust and ash. The familiar landmarks of daily life, bakeries, post offices, corner shops are gone, reduced to piles of brick and twisted metal. Fire, crews douse smoldering ruins, while rescue workers pull bodies from collapsed buildings. Above it all, the air raid sirens scream their cold, mechanical warnings. But down here, underground, the war has taken on a different shape. It's no longer about bombs. It's about endurance. About what happens to people when they are forced to live in close quarters for too long, when privacy vanishes, when small kindnesses become currency, and when secrets pile up like debris after a raid. You see it in the way people behave now. Mrs. Talbot no longer whispers the names of streets. Her prayers have stopped. She sits in silence, her hands folded in her lap, eyes staring at nothing. Mr. Finch's notebook grows heavier each day, filled with names, lists, and observations. He no longer just records who's here. He writes down who argued with whom, who cried in the night, who took an extra biscuit when they thought no one was watching. It's no longer a list. It's a ledger of human failure. And then there's the locked door, the maintenance room with the extra supplies, the secret bedrolls, the quiet sips of tea in private. The knowledge of its existence has seeped into every conversation, even when it's not mentioned aloud. People glance at it constantly now, their eyes flicking toward it like compasses that can't find north. No one has tried to open it again, but the damage is done. Trust has crumbled like the rooftops of bombed-out houses above. George and Lily, once the shelter's golden couple, now sit apart. George sleeps facing the wall. Lily knots her hands in her lap, lips pressed tight. They don't speak. No one asks why. Everyone knows. Mabel no longer lies under the lantern. She's found a new ritual sitting by the shelter entrance, staring up the staircase toward the faint outline of the street above. She doesn't try to leave, not yet, but her mind is already halfway outside. She's imagining a life beyond the shelter, beyond the war, beyond the stale air and whispered betrayals. But even in her daydreams, she knows the truth. The shelter has changed her. It has changed all of them, and there's no going back. The longer you stay underground, the more the surface world starts to feel unreal. There are people in this shelter who haven't seen the sun in weeks. Their skin has turned pale, their eyes used to the half-light of lanterns and candles. Time bends down here. Days blur into nights. Minutes stretch into hours. Sleep comes in fragments, interrupted by the distant echo of bombs or the restless shifting of bodies nearby. Hunger is constant but manageable, like a low-level ache in the background of every thought. And the human mind, trapped in this loop, starts to create new patterns, new beliefs. Some people have begun to think of the shelter as a separate world, entirely a place with its logic, its own rules, its strange gravity. The outside world feels like a rumor, now something you used to know, like a half-forgotten song. You hear whispers of people starting to prefer the shelter to the streets above. It's safer here, in a way, predictable. The same faces, the same routines. No risk of sudden death from falling rubble. No risk of coming home to find your house gone, your family missing. In the shelter, at least you know where everyone is. You know who snores, who talks in their sleep, who cries quietly into their blankets. It's claustrophobic, yes, but it's also comforting in its terrible sameness. Some people don't want to leave anymore, and that's the most dangerous part of all. Because once you start to prefer the cage, you forget how to live without it. The war above becomes an echo, a distant story told by the BBC announcer crackling through a shared radio. But down here, in the tunnels, a new kind of war is being fought. A war of patience, of small choices, of how much of yourself you're willing to give up just to keep breathing. You see it in the way people barter now. Not just food or blankets, but favors, silence, protection. Mrs. Keene, who once shared her tea freely, now keeps her cup close to her chest. Mr. Harris, the locksmith who helped open the door, refuses to look anyone in the eye. The wardens, once respected, are now quietly resented. Their private room, their hidden comforts, sits a wound that won't heal, but no one confronts them directly. Confrontation feels too dangerous. Better to let the resentment simmer, to pretend things are fine while quietly building a new set of rules under the surface. And then there are the stories, the strange things people begin to believe in the darkness. But down here, in the shelter, life has a rhythm. It's not a good rhythm, but it's steady, predictable. And in war, predictability becomes its kind of luxury. People know what to expect each night. The same bedrolls, the same whispered jokes, the same half-spoken worries about food and space. Fear becomes routine, something to fold into your blanket like a piece of old laundry. Tonight, you see Mabel sitting near the stairwell again, staring up into the darkness. She's not waiting for rescue. She's waiting for the courage to decide whether she wants to leave at all. She knows what's out there: bombs, burning buildings, streets she no longer recognizes. In here, at least, she knows where she fits. She has a spot, a role, a rhythm, and that, in its way, is terrifying. The shelter has become a world unto itself, and leaving it would mean starting over, becoming a stranger in the city above. Alfie sits beside her, map in hand, but he's stopped, adding new marks. The shelter is complete now, its social layout finished. He's memorized every sleeping spot, every secret stash of biscuits, every place where the walls drip with condensation. His pencil hovers, but there's nowhere left to draw. This is the whole world now. George and Lily, still distant but no longer angry, have settled into a quiet truce. They speak only when necessary, their conversations reduced to the essentials of survival. Did you eat? Is the blanket dry? Do you want the upper bunk tonight? Romance doesn't survive long in places like this, not the kind with flowers and promises, anyway. Love becomes practical, a thing of shared rationales and silent support. The leaders of the shelter, once trusted, now operate in the background. Mr. Dalloway no longer reads Dickens aloud. His audience has shrunk to a few loyal listeners, the rest pretending to sleep while their minds circle darker thoughts. Mr. Finch's notebook, once a harmless record, has become something sharper, ledger of power, a map of who owes what, to whom. He started keeping track of trades, tea for matches, space for silence, secrets for favors. No one appointed him to this role, but no one stops him either. It's easier to let someone else keep score, even if it makes your stomach twist. The maintenance door remains locked, but it's no longer the center of attention. People know the secret now. The wardens have carved out a life for themselves, a pocket of comfort hidden from the rest. But no one talks about it anymore. To bring it up would be to risk open rebellion, and no one has the energy for that. Instead, they let it sit in the back of their minds like a splinter they can't remove. And so the shelter life continues, reshaping itself into permanence. Children are born here now, not many, but enough to remind everyone that life finds a way to persist, even underground. A woman named Sarah Evans, the same one who once tried to leave during an air raid, gave birth in the corner last night. No doctor, no hospital bed, just a few women gathered around, soft cloths and whispered prayers. The baby's first cry echoed through the tunnel like a strange, fragile rebellion against the darkness. People smiled, but the smiles were tight, haunted. A new life means new responsibilities, new fears. Will this child ever see the sky? Will it ever know what grass feels like beneath its feet? These are questions no one dares to ask aloud. And then there's the matter of the keepers, as some have started calling the people who enforce the unspoken rules of the shelter. They're not official leaders, not exactly, but they control the flow of food, the allocation of space, the whispered warnings that keep people in line. Mr. Harris, the locksmith, has become one of them, now not by choice, but by quiet default. He holds the keys. He knows who has what, who owes whom. And in a place like this, knowledge is more valuable than gold. Sometimes the keepers break up arguments. Sometimes they start them. It depends on what keeps the balance intact. Power here isn't loud. It's whispered, passed in sideways glances, traded in nods and silences. And you've become part of it too, whether you wanted to or not. You've learned when to speak and when to stay quiet, when to offer a hand and when to pretend you didn't see. Your moral compass has softened, blurred by the constant pressure of survival. You're no longer the person who first walked into the shelter weeks ago, clutching a suitcase and hoping for safety. You're something else now, creature of the underground, shaped by darkness, molded by routine. And yet there's still a small part of you that remembers the surface world, the taste of fresh air, the feel of sunlight on your skin, the sound of rain hitting a rooftop instead of the heavy echo of bombs. That part aches quietly, tucked into the back of your mind like a folded letter you're too afraid to open. Outside, the war continues, but down here, it barely registers. The shelter is its universe now, with its own rules, its seasons, its strange version of time. People measure days by the pattern of meals, the rotation of bunks, the flickering of lanterns. And somewhere deep inside, they know they've crossed a line they can't uncross. Leaving would mean becoming a stranger in a city that no longer exists. Staying means surrendering to the slow erosion of self. But for now, no one makes a decision. They stay, they breathe, they wait. And as the night stretches on, you realize that the shelter isn't just a place to survive the Blitz anymore. It's a world between worlds, a liminal space where life continues in the shadows, quietly, stubbornly, in defiance of everything falling apart above. In the next part, we'll go even deeper into what happens when a temporary refuge becomes a permanent reality, when people stop asking, when will this end? And start asking, how do we live here forever? Stay with me. The night still has many hours left. The strangest thing about living underground is how easily you forget the surface. You'd think it would be the other way around, that people would cling to memories of sky, to the feeling of wind on their faces, to the taste of fresh air on their tongues. But after enough nights in the shelter, the outside world becomes a ghost story. Something half-believed, like a fading dream you can't quite place. And tonight, as you settle back into your familiar spot in the shelter, you realize just how far the transformation has gone. This is life now, not just survival, not just waiting, but a full existence formed beneath the earth, complete with customs, habits, and roles no one ever planned, but everyone now obeys. The air tonight is thick with resignation. No one asks when the war will end anymore. No one talks about victory or defeat. Those are surface concerns, distant echoes that don't apply here in the belly of London. Down here, people worry about different things: whose turn it is to sleep near the heater, who controls the last tin of condensed milk, who will clean the chemical toilets in the morning. And somewhere deep beneath those small worries is the real question everyone is too afraid to speak aloud. What if we never leave? What if this is it? What if the shelter is no longer a temporary refuge, but a permanent home? You feel it in your bones tonight, in the way people shuffle past each other without looking up, in the way conversations start and trail off into silence. The social rules have solidified now. They're not written down, but everyone knows them. Certain spaces belong to certain families. Certain jobs fall to certain people. Mrs. Keene controls the tea rationing now, doling out cups in measured portions with the precision of a chemist. Mr. Harris handles disputes, his voice calm but final. Mr. Finch, still writing in his notebook, has become the keeper of memory, recording not just who sleeps where, but who said what, who broke which rule, who whispered secrets in the dark. His lists have power, now not official power, but the kind that comes from knowing too much. People come to him quietly, offering small bribes for favorable mentions, or begging to be erased from his pages. No one wants their name next to a note that says hoarded food or started an argument. Reputation is currency here, and Finch is the banker. And then there's the newest development, the market. It started with small trades an extra biscuit for a corner near the wall, a piece of soap for 10 minutes with the kettle. But now it's evolved into something more structured. Alfie, the boy with the maps, has drawn up charts of who owns what and who can trade for it. He keeps them rolled. In his pocket, a strange underground economy unfolding in pencil and paper. There are no coins, no bills, just barter and favor and whispered deals made in the dark. Someone even traded a pair of dry socks for a night on the upper bunk last week. It's no longer about survival. It's about status, about comfort, about finding ways to carve out a sliver of control in a world that has none. You see it in the way people move now. They no longer flinch at the sound of distant bombs. They no longer startle when the shelter walls shudder from a nearby blast. Those things are background noise, like wind or rain used to be. Instead, the real focus is inside the shelter itself. Who's rising in the social order? Who's falling? Who's aligned with whom? It's like a miniature kingdom, complete with rulers and outcasts, heroes and villains, and the lines between them shift nightly. Sometimes you wonder if the war is still happening at all. You hear updates on the crackling radio announcer's calm voice reporting damage, reading casualty lists, mentioning faraway battles in places you can't picture. But those reports feel distant, like reading about another planet. Your world is here, in the tunnel, in the cold stone walls that sweat with condensation, in the lanterns that flicker just before dawn. And then there's the matter of the babies. Yes, babies, plural. Sarah Evans wasn't the only one to give birth in the shelter. Another woman, Ruth Collins, gave birth 2 nights ago, her face pale as chalk, her hands gripping the fabric of her skirt until her knuckles turned white. No doctor, again. Just whispered instructions passed between women who'd done this before. The baby survived, a small bundle of lungs and hunger, wrapped in an old coat. His cries echoed through the shelter like a soft alarm, waking people from half-sleep. For a moment, everyone smiled, even laughed softly, as if new life could somehow reset the rules. But by morning, the smiles faded. A baby means more mouths to feed, more bodies in an already crowded space, more fear wrapped in fragile flesh. People begin to talk in hushed tones. Should the babies stay? Should the mothers be asked to leave, to find safer, quieter places in the countryside? But no one says it openly. That would be too cruel to final. And so the babies stay, crying at all hours, reminding everyone that life continues, whether they want it to or not. There's talk of organizing the shelter more formally, now creating official roles, setting up a council, maybe even electing leaders, but the idea makes people uneasy. Formal power feels dangerous. Better to keep things in the shadows, to let the keepers control the flow of goods and space without the burden of titles. That way, if things go wrong, no one can be blamed directly. It's a system of plausible deniability, a delicate balance between control and chaos, and yet the cracks are widening. A theft occurs, a tin of corned beef vanishes from a family's stash. Everyone knows who took it, but no one confronts him. Confrontation risks breaking the fragile peace. Better to let it slide, to pretend, to avoid the spiral into open conflict. But the whispers grow louder. Trust fades a little more. People tighten their grip on their belongings, sleep with one eye open. And you find yourself adapting to you no longer expect fairness. You no longer expect kindness. You've learned to barter, to trade, to protect your tiny corner of the shelter with polite smiles and quiet vigilance. You're no longer shocked by any of it. That part of Youtha, one that used to flinch, that used to hope, has gone quiet. And yet, late at night, when the shelter dims and the only sound is the soft breathing of sleepers, you sometimes remember the surface world. You imagine grass beneath your feet, the sound of rain tapping on a window, the feel of sunlight on your face. These memories are slippery now, hard to hold on to. They fade like dreams when you wake, but they're still there, somewhere in the back of your mind, reminders of a life before the tunnel. And in those moments, you wonder, what happens if the war ends? What if the sirens stop and the all clear finally comes? Will people go back to their homes, or will they stay here, underground, in the only world they remember how to live in? It's not just fear keeping people in the shelter anymore. It's a habit, it's comfort, it's the strange, terrible relief of knowing exactly what each day will bring, even if what it brings is misery. Outside, the city waits, but inside, the shelter breathes on, a living organism of whispers, trades, routines, and quiet despair. In the next part, we'll find out what happens when the idea of leaving becomes more terrifying than staying. When people begin to fight, not against the war, but against the very thought of returning to the surface. Stay with me. There are still long hours left in this night. By now, the idea of morning has become abstract. In the world above, dawn still happens, but down here in the shelter, time has flattened into something unrecognizable. There's no sunrise in the tunnels, only the slow flickering of gas lanterns being refilled, the subtle shift in breathing patterns as people stir from restless half-sleep. Tonight is no different, except for one thing. The unspoken realization has finally taken root in everyone's mind. The war outside is no longer the biggest enemy. It's the surface itself, the unknown, the unpredictable, the shattered world that waits at the top of the staircase. The shelter has become safer than the city, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. People fear the bombs, yes, but they fear the aftermath even more, and so they stay. The days of thinking of this place as temporary are over. Life in the tunnel is life now, and leaving feels like an impossible task. Tonight, you watch as people double down on their routines, digging deeper into this underground existence, reinforcing their places in the shelter hierarchy as if they've accepted that this is forever. Mr. Finch updates his notebook, no longer just recording who slept, where or who traded what, but starting to assign quiet designations: keeper, trader, watcher, quiet, threat. It's not official, but it might as well be the law. His ledger has become the unofficial constitution of the tunnel, a document of social survival, and no one challenges it. People are too tired, too resigned. Better to let Finch keep track of everything than risk chaos. In another corner, Mrs. Keene boils water for tea, as if she's running a cafe. She measures leaves with military precision, handing out cups only to those who've earned them. A cup of tea is no longer just comfort, it's currency, a symbol of status. The more cups you get, the higher you're standing. Those who don't receive TR marked quietly as outsiders. Even the children have roles now. They don't play games anymore. Instead, they carry messages between families, fetch water, or sit near the entrance, keeping watch for strangers. Their eyes have aged faster than their bodies. No one scolds them for whispering strange stories about shadows in the tunnels or ghosts trapped in the walls. Some adults quietly believe the same things. It's easier to blame fear on the supernatural than on the slow decay of trust. Mabel, once defiant, now organizes the sleeping rotation. She decides who gets the warm spots, who sleeps near the walls, and who moves closer to the entrance. Her word isn't law, but it's close. She does it fairly, but the power changes her anyway. Sometimes she catches herself enjoying it, the small control over people's comfort. Then she feels guilty. Then she does it again. Alfie, the boy who used to draw maps for fun, has started drawing something else entirely. His latest sketches are of the surface, but not how it is now with rubble and bombed-out buildings, but how it might be if no one ever went back. He imagines trees growing over ruins, foxes nesting in empty houses, nature reclaiming the streets. Maybe the city's better off without us, he whispers to you one night, and you don't have the heart to argue. Deep down, part of you wonders, if he's right, the surface is no longer home. The shelter is you. Can feel the shift in your mind, too. You've stopped thinking in terms of days or weeks. You think in terms of shifts: who watches the door, who controls the food, who sleeps where. Your world is measured by lantern oil levels, by the creak of the ceiling when bombs fall nearby, by the list Finch updates each night. Above ground, London rebuilds and collapses in waves, but you've stopped picturing it. Your imagination no longer stretches that far. And then, one night, something happens that seals the shift forever. The wardens, those who once enforced the official rules, announce that the shelter will be reorganized permanently. No more pretending it's a temporary arrangement. They propose new roles, new systems, a food committee, a sanitation schedule, an education circle for the children. A doctor, if one can be found, will be appointed to monitor health. Everyone will have a job. Everyone will have a place. It's meant to bring order, to prevent the slow slide into chaos. But the announcement lands with a strange weight. People don't cheer. They nod quietly, their faces unreadable. They already knew this was happening. Now it's just official. Mabel accepts her role without question. Alfie signs up to track supplies. Mrs. Keene takes charge of meals. Mr. Finch will continue keeping records, though now everyone knows he's more than just a scribe. He's the memory of the shelter, the one who decides what gets remembered and what is quietly forgotten. And you're assigned to assist with logistics, making sure the small systems run smoothly, helping trade blankets and rationing lantern fuel. It's not glamorous, but it's steady work. It makes you part of the machine, part of the tunnel itself. At first, you wonder if this is surrender, but then you realize it's not surrender, it's adaptation. Humans are creatures of habit, of routine, and in the absence of the familiar, they will build new normalcies, no matter how strange or dark. The shelter becomes more organized than ever before. Nights fall into structured shifts. Meals are scheduled. Disputes are mediated quietly, efficiently. There's less shouting now, less panic, but there's also less joy. Laughter is rare. Stories are shorter. People conserve energy, emotionally and physically, for the long haul. A few people try to leave in the early mornings, climbing the stairs to see if their homes still stand. Some return, others don't. No one asks too many questions. Loss has become routine. The strange part is that no one even talks about the all-clear anymore. It's not that they believe the war will never end. Doesn't matter as much as it used to. The surface is a different problem now, a different world. The shelter has become its nation, complete with rituals and myths. People say the tunnel walls remember everything, that the ghosts of the first nights still whisper in the cracks, that the babies born here will never really belong to the surface world. Meanwhile, the adults continue their quiet rituals. Mrs. Keene, Mother T, oversees meals with the precision of a military quartermaster. Her tea corner has become more formal now, complete with cups marked with initials to prevent disputes. The rationing system is strict, but fair in a way that makes people trust her, even if they grumble. Mr. Harris still guards the maintenance room, his keys hanging from his belt like badges of rank. No one questions his authority anymore. His decisions are accepted, not because he's the strongest, but because he's become part of the architecture of the shelter itself, like a load-bearing wall, holding everything up. And Mabel, now fully embraced as gate, controls the flow of movement. She decides who sleeps where, who gets which blanket, and who is allowed near the stairwell leading to the surface. Her role is unchallenged, her word final. The hierarchy has hardened, but it's not cruel. It's simply the way things work now, and people prefer it to the uncertainty of the outside world. The shelter has become a closed loop of survival, a system of careful balance. And beneath the surface of order, something more profound is happening. People are starting to forget the old world altogether. You notice it in the way language shifts. No one says when the war ends anymore. Instead, they say if. Some stop mentioning the war at all, as if it belongs to a different reality. Talk of London's streets, of old jobs, of favorite shops and parks has faded into silence. Those memories have become dangerous, reminders of a life too painful to recall fully. They trigger longing, and longing is the first step toward despair. So people let go of those memories like balloons cut loose from a child's hand, floating up out of reach until they vanish. The shelter isn't just home notes the entire world. The council, meeting regularly in the maintenance room, has started making long-term plans. They discuss sanitation improvements, rotating duties, and even educational systems for the children born below ground. They whisper about building a new kind of society, one that won't depend on the surface returning to normal. What if this is better? Someone says one night, voice low but serious. What if we've been remade into something new? The question hangs in the air like smoke, and no one laughs it off, because part of you wonders if they're right. Above ground, you imagine there's rubble, fires, uncertainty. Down here, life is controlled, predictable. There's hunger, yes, and fear, but there's also order. The boundaries are clear. The rules make sense. In a strange, unsettling way, the shelter has become safer than the city it hides beneath. And you've stopped thinking about leaving. When you first came here, you counted the days. You marked each night in your mind, telling yourself it would be temporary. But somewhere along the way, you lost count. Time in the shelter isn't measured by clocks anymore. It's measured by rituals, lanterns lit, tea poured, rotations organized, shifts at the entrance, cleaning duty, and record keeping, sleep in broken cycles, meals in rationed portions, wake, repeat. This is life now, and you realize you're not alone in this acceptance. Even the new arrivals, the few who still trickle in from the surface, are quickly absorbed into the system. The shelter teaches them its ways within days. They stop talking about the outside faster than you'd expect. Some don't mention it at all. Perhaps they've seen things so terrible above ground that the darkness of the tunnels feels like mercy. Or perhaps the structure of the shelter, the clearly defined roles, the shared suffering, the communal routines, gives them a kind of relief they didn't realize they needed. People thrive on predictability, even when that predictability is built on hardship. And down here, in the tunnels, at least they know what to expect. The stories continue, but they've changed. People no longer tell tales of what they've lost. They invent myths about the shelter itself. Whispered legends of ghosts in the far tunnels, of footsteps heard in places no one should be walking, of a tunnel watcher who sees everything but is never seen. These stories serve a purpose. They replace the old narratives of surface life with new ones, giving the shelter its own culture, its own folklore. It's not just a place anymore, it's a civilization. And then there's the matter of the births. 2 more babies this week, bringing the total to 5. The shelter population is growing, not shrinking. People whisper that these children will never know the sky, and yet there's no panic in their voices, only a kind of resigned acceptance, maybe even pride. They are tunnel-born, as some call them now, the first generation of a new underground life. Their cries are part of the shelter's nightly soundtrack, no longer startling anyone. The council assigns caretakers, rotates shifts for watching the infants. It's efficient, communal. No child belongs to just one family anymore. They belong to the shelter. And this, more than anything, signals the final shift. People no longer think in terms of individuals. They think in terms of the group, the system, and the community. Personal desires shrink in the face of collective need. Choices are made not for personal gain, but for the balance of the whole. Even small actions, moving a blanket, sharing a crust of bread, are weighed against the larger good. You've become part of this too. You follow the rules without thinking. You do your assigned tasks, not because you're forced, but because it feels right now, natural, as if you've always lived this way. The surface is a fading dream. The tunnel is home. And yet, late at night, when most people are asleep, you sometimes catch yourself wondering what would happen if you climbed the stairs, pushed open the heavy door, and stepped back into the world above. Would you recognize it? Would it recognize you? Or have you changed so much that you're no longer built for the sky? These thoughts come and go, like passing shadows, and you let them drift away. Better not to dwell. Better to focus on the next lantern refill, the next tea ration, the next whispered meeting in the maintenance room. The shelter continues. It breathes, it remembers, and so do you. In the next part, we'll go even deeper into the psychology of life underground, how people reshape not just their routines, but their very sense of reality when the surface becomes too distant to believe in anymore. Stay with me. The night still stretches ahead. By now, the idea of the outside has become almost mythical, like something from a story whispered to children at bedtime. The people in the shelter no longer measure time by clocks or calendars. They measure it by lantern shifts, food rotations, sleeping schedules, and the steady rhythm of their heartbeat against cold stone. You've been here long enough to feel the difference in your bones. Your memories of the surface are no longer sharp, they're soft at the edges, blurred like an old photograph fading in the damp. The city above, once alive with buses and chimneys, milkmen and street lamps, is now a ghost image behind your closed eyes. You don't even know if your street is still standing. You don't ask. No one asks. Questions like that are dangerous in a place like this because they lead to answers that don't help, so you stop asking. And so does everyone else. The shelter isn't just a place to hide from bombs anymore, it's the only reality that feels solid. Tonight, you see it. The way people move is different now, slower but more certain. Their routines have deepened into rituals. Mabel still called gatewalks, the same path every night, checking the sleeping arrangements, counting the blankets like a monk counting prayer beads. Her steps are soft but purposeful, the guardian of the social order. Alfie sits with his notebook, drawing not maps of the shelter anymore, but diagrams of human relationships. Who trusts whom? Who trades with whom? Who whispers in corners? His maps look like spiderwebs now, lines crossing lines, a tangle of human connections that mean more than any physical space. Ledgerfinch has started reading the old records aloud at night. Names, trades, conflicts, resolutions. It's not just documentation anymore. It's history, a public ritual that reminds everyone who they are now and how they got here. People listen silently, letting the sound of their own lives echo back to them, becoming a kind of comfort. It's easier than facing the unknown. Above ground, the war continues, but no one talks about it. The BBC crackles on the shared radio in the corner, but the news feels like fiction now. Reports of troop movements, bombings, and political speeches, they drift into the air like smoke, irrelevant to the daily life of the shelter. The war above has become background noise. The real war is down here, the quiet battle to maintain balance, to keep fear from turning into chaos. And you've become part of that too. You have your logistics. You manage blankets, check supplies, and help organize the food schedule. You do it without thinking now, your hands moving automatically, your mind tuned to the pulse of the tunnel. It's not just survival, it's a role in a living organism. The shelter is like a single body now, each person a cell, each task part of the system. There's comfort in that, even when you're hungry, even when your back aches from the stone floor. Comfort in knowing where you fit, comfort in routine. Even the children have absorbed this new life. Rosie still called Ika recites the list of daily tasks from memory, her small voice rising and falling like a lullaby. She plays games with the younger children, but the games are no longer about make-believe kingdoms or pirates. They're about food rationing, blanket sharing, and shift rotations. The pretend world has merged with the real one, and the children grow up inside a structure of rules so ingrained that they don't question them. They don't know they're living in an emergency. For them, this is just life. And then there's the language. Words have changed. Before means the world of shops, buses, and open skies. Now is the world of lanterns, ledgers, and careful trades. Later is a dangerous word, implies something might change, and no one wants to deal with that uncertainty, so they erase it from their conversations. You find yourself doing it too. And it's not just speech that's changed, it's thought itself. People have adapted to life underground in ways that go deeper than routine. They dream of tunnels, of lanterns, of endless corridors where they can keep walking without danger, safe in the dark. Some even confess, quietly, that the thought of going back to the surface fills them with more fear than staying below forever. What would they find if they left bombed-out homes, lost friends, an empty city with no place for them anymore? The shelter has become a cocoon, but not everyone wants to become a butterfly. Some would rather stay in the cocoon forever. The council knows this. They've stopped pretending that reintegration is the goal. Their meetings are about sustainability now, not exit strategies. How to manage long-term supplies. How to educate the children without teaching them about a world they may never see. How to maintain health without real medicine. Plans are made for constructing better bunks, for digging secondary tunnels in case new families arrive. It's not emergency management anymore, it's urban planning, a permanent settlement, a new kind of society. And you've stopped feeling surprised by any of it. You've stopped wondering if this is strange or wrong. It just is. Life in the tunnel has a clarity that the surface never had. No advertisements, no politics, no choices too big to handle. That thought should scare you, but it doesn't. It soothes you. It makes sense. One night, during a rare moment of stillness, you sit near the stairwell and try to remember what grass smells like. You close your eyes, reaching for the memory, but it's slippery. You can picture green, but the scent won't come. That smell has become home. Down here is structure, routine, certainty, even if it's claustrophobic. You're not the only one who feels this. They talk about next week's food supplies, next month's lantern oil ration. No one says when we get out. They say, as long as we stay safe. Safety has become the highest value, the ruling principle, and the safest thing of all is staying here, together, underground. Some nights, you hear people whisper stories about shelters that stayed sealed for years, entire communities that never came back up. And then there are the babies, the tunnel-born, soft blankets and whispered voices. They will never know sunlight unless someone takes them up the stairs. And no one does. Not yet. In the next part, we'll explore what happens when a community accepts the underground as permanent life. The night is still, long, and the story isn't done by now. The shelter isn't just a place, it's an identity. It has soaked into the bones of everyone living beneath the city, replacing the old patterns of life with new ones that make more sense in the dark. No one talks about normal life anymore because this is normal life. The surface world has become a distant idea, a memory softened by time and disuse. Tonight, you notice how completely the change has settled into every part of the routine. People no longer glance toward the stairs when a bomb rumbles overhead. They don't flinch. They don't check their watches. They simply continue what they were doing, stirring tea, folding blankets, writing in ledgers as if the sound of collapsing buildings is nothing more than distant thunder. The hierarchy of the shelter has solidified like concrete. The council meets in regular shifts now, discussing logistics, food management, and social balance, as if running a city council instead of a group of people hiding from bombs. No one questions the authority of Gate, Ledger, Mother T, and Harris. They don't need official titles anymore because their control is woven into the shelter's fabric. Even the way people look at them has changed, not with deference, exactly but with the resigned respect you give to natural forces. They are not leaders because they want power. They are leaders because the system chose them, or maybe because no one else wanted the burden. And you've accepted your role, to your job in logistics has become part of your identity now. You track supplies, trade blankets, and manage rotations. You're part of the engine that keeps the shelter running smoothly, and in this place, that role is more meaningful than any job you've had before. You don't think of yourself as who you were before the bombs. You think of yourself as a shelter citizen, person of the tunnels. The babies, the tunnel-born, are crawling now. Their first steps are taken not on grass or carpet, but on cold, concrete floors lit by lantern light. They play with wooden spoons and empty ration tins, their tiny hands gripping objects that will become relics of their childhood. For them, the shelter isn't a refuge, it's the entire universe. They've adapted in ways too subtle to notice unless you're paying close attention. Their voices are softer now, rarely raised above a murmur. Their footsteps are quieter, habits formed by weeks and months of walking carefully to avoid waking others. Privacy is gone, of course, but that's no longer a problem because people have stopped expecting it. Conversations happen in code, in whispers, in eye contact. You see, trades happen with barely a word spoken, a sock for a candle stub, a blanket shift for a turn near the heater. They're the natural flow of life in a closed system. And that system has rules, most of them unspoken. Don't hoard. Don't argue loudly. Don't draw attention to yourself unless you have something useful to say. These rules aren't written down, but everyone knows them. Ledger Finch still writes in his notebook, but now he's recording more than transactions. He writes observations, behaviors, and small notes about the social temperature of the shelter. His records aren't for the outside world anymore. They're for the future of this one. For when the children grow up and need to understand how things came to be this way. The council has even discussed creating a formal written history. The early days of shelter life, the first arrivals, the first councils, the first births. He carves them into the stone with a piece of metal salvaged from a broken lantern bracket. His art is rough, but it tells the story clearly. There was before, and now there is now. And there may never be after Mabelgate has stopped taking shifts at the entrance. She says it's unnecessary. No one leaves anymore, except under council's supervision, and new arrivals are rare. Don't survive long in the new social structure. Most of them do adapt. The shelter teaches them fast. Mother Mrs. Keene has expanded her duties. She's started organizing meal lessons, teaching the children how to stretch rations, values to the next generation, patience, sharing, control. Ledger calls it the quiet code, a set of behaviors designed to keep the system running smoothly. You've absorbed it too. You speak in soft tones. You step lightly. You avoid unnecessary conflict. You don't ask for more than your share, even when you're hungry. And you are always hungry, but the hunger has become part of the background, like the cold, like the hum of lanterns, like the smell of oil and damp stone. The idea of leaving the shelter has become taboo. People don't say it out loud, but everyone feels it. The tunnel is known, and the known is safer than the unknown, even when it's dark and cold. You wonder if anyone remembers the last time they climbed the stairs just to breathe air. No one talks about air anymore, not the way they used to. as a luxury or a memory. Now it's just another concept that belongs to the before. The surface has become like a fairy tale, a place with trees and skies and buildings that don't shake when bombs fall. But fairy tales aren't real, and neither is the surface. At least not in the minds of the shelter dwellers. The council discusses building more permanent structures. They want to replace the bunks with better beds, to carve out storage spaces in the side tunnels, and to create a designated learning area for the children. They talk about establishing ceremonies, naming days for babies, memorials for the dead, rituals to mark the passing of seasons, even though no one sees the seasons anymore. They measure time by lantern oil refills and supply checks. Days are counted by cycles of sleep and waking, not by calendars. And yet, somehow, the system works. People are calmer than they were in the early weeks of shelter life. The fights have stopped. The panic is gone. There's no more screaming in the middle of the night. The fear has settled into something quieter, something manageable. It's not that people aren't afraid anymore, it's that they've learned to live inside the fear, to make it part of their routine. The system has absorbed the terror and turned it into a ritual. Check supplies, share food, take turns sleeping near the warmest spots, listen to ledger, read the records, and you've stopped dreaming of the outside world. Your dreams are of tunnels, new smooth stone walls, of flickering lanterns, of the quiet breathing of people sleeping side by side. You don't miss the sky because you've forgotten how it felt to stand under it. And when you do think of leaving, it's not with hope, but with dread. What would you find if you went up there? What if there's nothing left? Or worse, what if there is something left, but no place for you in it? You've changed too much to go back to that world. You're not the same person you were when you first descended into the shelter. You're part of something else, now a new society, a new kind of human life, forged in darkness and silence. In the next part, we'll explore what happens when the people of the shelter accept this life, not just as survival, but as purpose. When they stop waiting for the world to return and start building a new one underground. Stay with me. The night isn't over yet. By now, the people in the shelter have stopped pretending this is temporary. What began as survival has become settlement, and what was once a refuge is now a way of life. The shift isn't sudden, it happens like most things underground, slowly, quietly, like water wearing down stone. You see it tonight more clearly than ever. The shelter has become not just a home, but a system, a world, a complete society beneath. The city that used to hum with taxis and laughter and the smell of bakeries in the morning, that world is gone now, or at least it has disappeared from everyone's daily thinking. The people here no longer plan to go back. Instead, they plan how to live better where they are. Tonight, you see it in the eyes of the council as they sit in their corner near the maintenance door, heads close together under the dim light of a lantern. Their discussions aren't about war updates or bomb counts anymore. They're about long-term infrastructure, how to extend the tunnel deeper, how to reinforce the walls with sandbags and scrap metal from the storage room, how to create a water filtration system from tin cans and cloth. Ledger Finch suggests a formal archive of everything that has happened since the first night underground, complete with rules, roles, and written lessons for the children born here. Mother Mrs. Keene proposes stricter rationing, not just to conserve food, but to teach the younger generation discipline and patience. Gate Mabel talks about mapping out the unused parts of the shelter network, perhaps expanding into old maintenance tunnels, places no one has dared to go yet. Her eyes glint in the low light, not with fear, but with resolve. There's talk of assigning permanent roles to each person now, not just temporary jobs, but lifelong positions: caretaker, builder, cook, teacher, watcher. These titles are already used casually, but now they will be made official, part of the structure of this underground society. People are no longer thinking in terms of until the war ends. They're thinking in terms of forever. And you feel it too. The part of you that once longed for sunlight has gone quiet. You understand the comfort of knowing your place, of having clear expectations, of waking up each day to a world where the rules don't change. Above ground, there is chaos. Down here, there is control. Something is soothing in the monotony, in the rhythm of routines, so familiar they blur into each other. Lantern lighting, blanket folding, ration counting, record keeping, the soft murmur of bedtime stories whispered beneath layers of wool. Even the air feels different. Now thicker, yes, but familiar, like a second skin. You've stopped noticing the dampness. You've stopped noticing the smell of oil and bodies and metal. It's just air now. Just life. The babies crawl in the corners, chasing dust motes in the lantern light. Their parents don't shush them anymore. Noise isn't a threat here. Not like it was in the early days when every cough sounded like a crack in the wall. Now, noise is part of the world, part of the living, breathing system. There's even laughter again, soft and short, but real. People have learned to find humor in small things, the way Mr. Harris snores, the way Alfie draws everyone with exaggerated noses in his murals, the way Mother T pretends to scold the children for sneaking extra spoonfuls, but always lets them do it anyway. Life isn't easy, but it's life. It's steady. And steady has become the highest form of happiness. Outside, no one knows what's happening anymore. The radio is checked daily, but the reports blur together now. More bombings, more cities destroyed, more speeches about resilience and courage. Down here, in the tunnels, those words don't mean much. Resilience is just another word for routine. Courage is getting up every day and doing the same tasks over and over. Not because you want to, but because that's how you keep the system from collapsing. Some people still whisper about the surface late at night, but not with longing, with confusion. What would we do up there now? Someone asks once, voice barely audible over the soft breathing of sleepers. Where would we even go? No one answers. The silence is answer enough. The surface has become an abstraction, a place where people used to live, but don't anymore, like ancient Rome or Atlantis. It's not relevant to the day-to-day life of the shelter. The council knows this. They've stopped even pretending that reintegration is a goal. Instead, they focus on improvements, better water collection methods, shared teaching of reading and writing for the children, and more structured storytelling times to pass on knowledge without books. Ledger reads the records each night, but now it's part of a ceremony, a kind of secular prayer that reminds everyone of their place in the order of things. Names are read aloud, trades are noted, births and deaths are recited. The shelter listens. In silence, heads bowed, not out of fear, but out of reverence. The The records are not just about history, they are about belonging. If your name is read, you exist. You are part of the system. The few who have died since the first days are remembered too. Their names are spoken softly, their blankets repurposed, but their stories kept alive. The children learn these stories as lessons. They know who built the first bunks, who organized the first ration queue, who kept singing even when the bombs were the loudest. The past is not a place of nostalgia, it's a guidebook for survival. And then there's the expansion. The old maintenance tunnels, once considered too risky, are being explored now. Small teams go out each day with lanterns and chalk, marking the walls so they don't get lost. They bring back reports of empty spaces, rooms that could be converted into sleeping quarters, storage areas, maybe even new kitchens. There's talk of moving deeper, setting up new zones, and dividing the shelter into sectors like a city map. It's not just survival anymore, it's urban planning. The children play games where they assign themselves roles. I'll be the water keeper, one says. I'll be the storyteller, says another. No one pretends to be a pilot or a baker or a policeman anymore. Those are jobs from the surface. Down here, the jobs are different. The priorities are different. And that's what makes this permanent. The mindset has shifted. It's not just about adapting, it's about becoming something new. A new kind of human life, tunnel life, shelter life. A society that remembers, quietly, to forget the sky. In the next part, we'll explore what happens when the generations begin to shift, when those born in the shelter start to grow up, and the old memories of surface life fade away completely, replaced by a new way of thinking, a new culture of the underground. Stay with me. The night still stretches ahead by now. The shift from survival to settlement has become complete, not just in practice, but in thought. The people of the shelter no longer think of themselves as refugees waiting for the world to heal. They think of themselves as residents of a new world altogether, one that exists beneath the old one. And tonight, you see the final phase of this transformation begin to unfold. The birth of a new generation that will never know anything else, the tunnel-born. Children are growing fast. They crawl through the shelter with steady limbs, their small hands tracing the cracks in the walls like they're learning a language no one else speaks. They don't ask about the sky because they've never seen it. Their stories are about tunnels and lanterns and the warm smell of tea rising from Mother T's corner. Rosie, still called Eco now, teaches the younger ones how to measure oil for the lamps, how to fold blankets the shelter way, not the surface way. She mimics the adults perfectly, and the adults let her. There's comfort. Generation adapts so easily to life underground. It means continuity. It means safety. It means no one has to explain the trauma of before, because, for these children, there is no before. Only now. Only below. The council understands this too. Their meetings have shifted away from emergency planning and now focus entirely on permanence. Ledger Finch has started keeping 2 separate books. One is the usual ledger, recording trades and daily routines. The other is a history, written not for the current residents, but for the children and the children's children. It contains lessons. How to filter water through cloth and charcoal. How to check for tunnel stability by listening to the echoes of footsteps. And how to stretch tea leaves across 3 uses instead of 2. It also contains cultural instructions. When to tell the stories of the first nights, how to remember the names of the original shelter families, and when to hold silent ceremonies for those who have died. Ledger reads from the history book each night now. After the regular records, the people listen in silence, letting the words settle into the bones of the tunnel, into the minds of the children who sit cross-legged near the front. It's not just survival anymore, it's legacy. Alfie has expanded his wall drawings into full murals. Entire sections of the shelter are now covered in carvings and charcoal sketches that depict the history of life underground. He's drawn the arrival of the first families, the building of the bunks, the trade agreements, and the birth of the tunnel-born. His drawings are rough but clear, a visual record of a life most people outside will never understand. And maybe that's the point. The shelter has become a closed world, a sealed system. It no longer depends on the surface for its identity. It has its myths now, its language. People say the above, the way ancient people might have said the gods, with a mix of awe and distance, not quite believing in it fully, but not willing to dismiss it entirely either. The stairwell still exists, but it's more of a symbol now than a doorway. Mabel Gate still controls who goes near it, but most people don't ask anymore. The need to go up has faded, replaced by the security of staying down, and the new generation. They don't even see the stairs as a way out. They see it as a boundary, like the edge of a village marked by rocks or trees. It's not meant to be crossed. It's meant to be respected. The council has formalized this in a new rule. No child may ascend the stairs until they've reached an age of understanding. What that age is has not been clearly defined, but everyone knows what it means. The children will stay here, grow here, learn here, and eventually take over the roles of their parents. The shelter is no longer a stopgap. It's a lineage, and you've accepted it fully now. There's no part of you left that dreams of fresh air or open skies. Those dreams have been replaced by the comfort of knowing your role in a system that works. However strange it might seem from the outside, you check supplies, you help teach the younger ones, you listen to Ledger's readings, and you find yourself thinking of next month in terms of lantern oil stocks, not in terms of calendars. The calendar has no meaning here. Time is counted in meals, in rotations, in birthdays, marked not by candles, but by the giving of a new job. The sheltered children don't receive toys for their birthdays. They receive tasks. Today you help with the water. Today you learn to scrape the mold from the far walls. Today you memorize the names of the first nights. And they smile when these tasks are given, because it means they are becoming part of the system, part of the world. There is no rebellion. There is no boredom. There is simply belonging. The council has even discussed creating a written constitution, a document to formalize what everyone already knows by heart. Ledger is drafting it now, writing it on scraps of paper sewn together with thread, kept in a box near the maintenance door. These rules aren't new, but writing them down makes them permanent, sacred, part of the culture. There's talk of carving them into the wall next to Alfie's drawings. Some suggest chanting them during mealtime so the children will learn them like songs. And you realize, as you sit there watching the council murmur in the lamplight, that this isn't about war anymore. The war could end tomorrow or last for years. It doesn't matter. The shelter has moved beyond the surface timeline. It has become its civilization, its clock, its world. The few people who still talk about the surface do so like they're remembering. A dream, fuzzy, half-true, pleasant, but irrelevant. Do you remember gardens? Someone asks once, during a rare moment of quiet, the smell of grass after rain. No one answers directly. Instead, someone hums a tune, soft and low, and the memory floats away like smoke. It's easier to live in the now. The surface is for ghosts. The tunnel is for the living. And so the nights continue. The lanterns flicker. The babies grow. The wall drawings expand. The names of the dead are whispered each night before sleep, not in sorrow, but in rhythm, like part of a lullaby. The shelter breathes on, a living organism made of soft footsteps, careful hands, whispered trades, and shared air. In the next part, we'll go even deeper into the generational shift, how the children born in the tunnel begin to shape the world in ways even the council didn't expect, creating new customs, new meanings, and a life no longer tied to the world that came before. Stay with me. The night is still long, and the story isn't over yet. By now, the shelter isn't just a place where people live, it's a place where new people are made, not just in body, but in mind. The children born beneath the earth are growing into something different from their parents. And tonight, you see the first signs of what that means. The first generation of tunnel-born have reached the age where they begin to take over roles from the adults. But they don't take on those roles exactly the way the older generation imagined. They add new rules, small changes, subtle shifts that ripple through the structure of shelter life like quiet earthquakes. Rosie, still called Echo, no longer just repeats what she hears. She has begun to revise it. When Ledger reads the nightly records, Echo sits beside him, softly correcting phrases, updating stories, smoothing over conflicts so that the history sounds cleaner, simpler, easier to memorize. No one tells her to stop. The adults begin to accept her edits as truth. It's easier to move forward when the past is orderly. Alfie keeps drawing, but now his murals don't just depict what happened. They show what might have happened, or what should have happened. His new drawings blur the line between memory and myth. He adds extra figures to the carvings, heroes who saved food during the hardest months, children who sang songs that calmed crying babies, mysterious watchers who patrol the outer tunnels to keep danger away. These figures become part of the shelter's daily conversations. Did the Watchers exist? No one knows, but people start leaving small offerings near the entrance to the far tunnels anyway, just in case. The new generation believes in the Watchers more easily than they believe in London. To them, the city above is a fairy tale, but the tunnels are real. The tunnel walls, the lamp oil smell, the soft press of blankets against cold skin, these are their truths. You watch this transformation happen with a strange mix of wonder and surrender. Part of you remembers the surface world, the feel of wind, the sight of rain streaking down a window pane, the sound of buses rumbling by. But those memories feel thin now, like paper worn too soft to hold. The children don't have those memories at all. For them, the surface is as distant as stories of Atlantis or Rome. When they ask questions, they ask about the tunnels. How deep do they go? Are there other shelters out there? Could there be entire other tunnel cities, hidden away, living just like this? And you don't know how to answer. Maybe there are. Maybe there aren't. It doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that the shelter has become the whole world to the people inside it. The council accepts this, even encourages it. Ledger updates the records to include the Watchers as part of the official history. Mother T expands her teachings to include not just rationing and patience, but the new rituals the children have invented, like the pebble game, where they pass small stones in a circle before meals to remind themselves of their shared survival, or the lantern songs they hum each night before sleep, melodies no adult taught them, but everyone now knows by heart. Mabelgate stays close to the entrance still, but she rarely looks up the stairs anymore. Instead, she watches the children, making sure they take turns, making sure they learn the rules, making sure they believe the shelter is the world. And they do, completely. You realize this shift has gone deeper than anyone expected. The children don't just accept the shelter, they love it. They find joy in the closeness, in the shared meals, in the carved stories on the walls. They play games that involve running quietly between bunks, weaving through the legs of adults like small ghosts, their laughter soft and contained so as not to break the atmosphere. They learn to breathe in time with the collective breath of the shelter, to listen for the heartbeat of the tunnel, the drip of condensation, the hum of lanterns, the quiet sighs of sleepers shifting in their beds. The adults, for their part, begin to follow the children's lead. It's easier that way. The new rituals are soothing, simpler than the old rules of before. No one talks about war anymore. No one mentions bombs or armies or governments. Those ideas are too large, too abstract. The children's world is made of small, tangible things: food, warmth, stories, the rhythm of shared life. Even Ledger has stopped recording news from the radio. It crackles in the corner sometimes, but fewer and fewer people listen. The reports from the surface sound like broadcasts from another planet. The shelter has cut its emotional tether to the world above. People still perform surface-related tasks. The air vents are checked. The stairwell door is maintained, but these are practical duties, not symbolic ones. The idea of returning has faded from the group mind. The stairwell is just another tunnel, no more sacred than the water corner or the wall of names. And you feel the change inside yourself, too. You've stopped thinking about before as a place you might revisit. You think about now. You think about next. Your thoughts are shaped by the rhythms of shelter life, the food rotations. They chant while they play, round and round. We stay below, where the warm lights softly glow. It's not a song from the old world. It's a new one. Here is safe. Here is always. The council discusses expanding the murals into all the side tunnels, turning the entire shelter into a living history book. Alfie agrees to lead the project, but he invites the children to help. They add their touches: animals made of lines and dots, stories of the first meal, the first bath, the first child born underground. They add new symbols: test spirals, hands, stars with extra points, symbols that mean something only to them. It doesn't matter if the adults understand. The new generation owns the walls now. The rituals continue to evolve. People begin to touch the stone walls when they pass certain spots. A habit no one planned, but everyone starts doing. They hum when the lanterns are refilled, a low note that fills the air like a soft vibration. Some start sleeping in designated patterns, forming circles around the youngest, creating rings of protection without being told to. These aren't rules written by the council, they're instincts grown from life in the tunnel. And through it all, the shelter changes not by accident, but by choice. The people are not waiting for rescue anymore. They are building a new way of living, a culture shaped by the darkness, by the rhythm of careful survival, by the slow, steady pulse of life without the sky. In the next part, we'll see how the second generation begins to take control, not just of the daily tasks, but of the entire meaning of shelter life. We'll explore how traditions harden into permanent identity. Stay with me. The night is still long, and the story continues. Bye. Now, the shelter isn't just a place where people live. It's a place where generations are forged, where customs crystallize, and where the past is reshaped, not as memory, but as myth. The children born underground are no longer simply following in the footsteps of their parents. They are rewriting the purpose of the shelter itself. And tonight, you see that change fully unfold. The second generation, the tunnel-born children, who've grown into adolescence, have taken over leadership in ways so gradual and natural that no one protested. Not even the original council. Mabel, Ledger, Mother T, Harris, they are still there, but their roles have softened, become ceremonial. They sit back during the meetings now, letting Echo and Alfie and the other tunnel-born speak first, propose plans, and organize duties. The older generation listens, not because they are too tired to lead, but because they see that the children are already living in a different world, one they cannot fully understand. It's not the world of before anymore, it's a world entirely built on now. And the tunnel-born have decided that the old rules of waiting and surviving are no longer enough. They want to grow, expand, and define. The drawings show tunnel cities with layers of rooms, families in organized circles, and children learning from elders beneath carved ceilings. There are symbols everywhere, circles within circles, spiral patterns, hands reaching out but not up. The stairway to the surface is depicted too, but not as an escape. It's drawn as a boundary marker, a sacred threshold never crossed. It's no longer the way out, it's the edge of the known world. The second generation has turned the shelter into a universe of its own, and their ideas of expansion don't point upward, they point sideways and deeper. Tonight, you sit in the lantern light, listening to Echo lead the evening gathering. Her voice is calm but steady, with the quiet authority of someone who has never known life outside the tunnels and never wanted to. She reads from the new scrolls, stitched cloth and paper, that contain the Shelter Codex, a collection of rules, rituals, and shared beliefs. Some of the rules are practical. Lantern oil is for everyone. The smallest eat first. Hands work together, not alone. But others are philosophical, born from years underground. Stone remembers. Darkness listens. Silence is part of speech. The Codex isn't just about surviving anymore, it's about belonging, about defining what it means to live underground as a people, not as victims of a disaster, but as founders of a new way of life. The Watchers are now part of this Codex, too, not just as myth, but as accepted reality. No one questions whether they exist. They are spoken of as fact, unseen figures who patrol the outer tunnels, keeping balance, maintaining order. Offerings are left for them, daily small scraps of food, pebbles arranged in patterns, whispered thanks. Children play games where they pretend to be watchers, moving silently along the walls, watching over the sleeping. The watchers are not gods. They are part of the community, part of the unseen structure that holds the world together. And no one, not even the original surface-born adults, finds this strange anymore. It's simply part of life. The rituals have expanded to before meals. Everyone places a hand on the floor for 3 breaths, acknowledging the stone that holds them. Birthdays are no longer counted by years, but by milestones. First time tending a lantern, first time leading a trade, first time telling a story to the group. Age is less important than contribution, and death, when it happens, is marked by silence. Not mourning, but recognition. Names are added to the mural wall, and then life continues. Because, in the shelter, life is circular, not linear. There is no beginning and end, only repetition and memory, looped like the chants that echo through the tunnels each night. The older generation has adjusted to this quietly. They know they are fading into the role of ancestors, still alive but no longer in charge. Ledger smiles as Echo reads the records now, letting her change the wording, simplify the stories, and make them easier for the young ones to learn. Mother T lets the children run the food rotations, only stepping in when asked. Harris, once the gatekeeper, now watches the stairway, like a guardian of a relics, something important but not functional. The steps remain, but no one climbs them. The door is checked, yes, but no one wants it opened. It's not about fear anymore, it's about purpose. The tunnel is home, the surface is history, and you've stopped thinking about the world above. You know that it exists, but you also know that you no longer belong to it. Your mind has shifted fully to the underground rhythms. You think in terms of lantern hours, meal rotations, sleep cycles, and water checks. You listen for the sounds of the tunnel, the drip of condensation, the hum of shared breathing, the quiet scrape of hands against stone as people settle in for the night. These are the sounds of life now, and they're soothing. They remind you that you're part of something that works, something that makes sense. Outside, there is war and weather and unpredictable change. Inside, there is order and calm and community. Even the darkness feels like part of you now, something to be feared, but something to live within, to accept as normal. The second generation doesn't talk about light as something they've lost. They talk about it as something distant, interesting perhaps, but not necessary. They have found light in other ways, in the reflections of lanterns on the walls, in the glow of shared memory, in the warmth of close bodies sleeping side by side. And tonight, you realize you wouldn't leave even if the war ended tomorrow. You wouldn't trade this life for the chaos of the surface. This life, strange as it would seem to anyone above, is stable, predictable, and safe in its way. The second generation has created something unique, not just a survival system, but a culture, a civilization of the underground, a world with its language, its myths, its rituals, its version of happiness. In the next part, we'll see how this underground world prepares for its future, not with thoughts of escape, but with plans for generations to come. We'll explore what happens when people no longer see themselves as temporary shelter dwellers, but as permanent tunnel dwellers, ready to pass on their new way of life indefinitely. Stay with me. The night still has more to teach us by now. The children born underground are not just inheriting the tunnel life, they're building on it, shaping it into something the surface-born never could have imagined. Tonight, as you lie awake in the soft, warm darkness, you realize the final stage of this transformation is beginning. The shift from survival to continuity, from temporary escape to permanent existence. The council, once the ultimate authority, now functions more like elders, consulted for wisdom, but no longer controlling the structure of daily life. Echo leads most of the gatherings now. The rituals she guides have become second nature to everyone. Before meals, each person touches their head to the wall in gratitude for shelter. Before sleep, the community chants the names of the original families who came underground. These names are carved into the murals now, part of the growing visual record that winds along the tunnel walls like vines, images of the first nights, the rationing, the first births, the learning of new ways to live. Alfie's drawings have become even more elaborate, and new artists have joined him. The children add symbols only they understand, marks that signify moments important to their generation. The first time someone learned to refill a lantern without spilling oil, the first shared teaching circle where all knowledge was passed on in a single night, the first time a child was chosen to lead a day's planning. These milestones are now more significant than birthdays. The concept of age itself is dissolving in the shelter culture, replaced by skill markers and communal roles. Children are called lantern keepers, water watchers, or record echoes rather than being referred to by how many years they've lived. It's about contribution now, not time. You notice this shift in your thinking, too. You no longer mark your days by anything except the routines that keep life moving smoothly, the food distributions, the rotations of sleep and wakefulness, the careful maintenance of the small systems that prevent chaos. The shelter breathes on its own now, a living organism that knows exactly how to keep itself stable. And the people inside it, they've become something new, hearing tuned to the softest sounds, muscles trained for quiet movement, for careful steps, for shared tasks performed without waste. No one runs in the tunnels anymore, unless it's part of a game where silence is the goal. The games have changed to children play echo tag, where they pass whispers instead of touches. They play shadow keeper, where one child leads a line of others through the darkness by sound alone, teaching them to navigate without fear. These games are not diversions, they're training, part of the culture now. Your logistics tasks have expanded into mentoring the younger ones, showing them how to manage resources, how to trade fairly, and how to think in terms of the whole group rather than individual need. It's not a sacrifice anymore, it's just life. Selfishness isn't punished, something closer to a scriptura daily log of life, but also a guidebook for the future. The second generation has added their sections, including new myths, new lessons, and new proverbs. The wall listens better than the ear. Stone shares memory. Light belongs to all. Darkness belongs to none. Prayers, but no one treats them as religious. They're just facts of tunnel life. The stairwell to the surface is still there, but it's now a ceremonial space, not a passageway. No one uses it. The door is checked monthly to ensure it hasn't decayed, but no one talks about opening it. It stands as a marker of history, like a monument to a past life, but it's no longer part of the daily plan. Children are brought there for the boundary lessons, where they learn that the tunnel is their world and the stairway is the edge. Not a door to freedom, but a wall that holds the world together by keeping chaos out. They place pebbles at the base of the stairs as offerings, not because they believe something waits beyond, but because it's part of the story now. The surface is a legend, and legends are important to maintain, but not to visit. And then there's the tunnel map, the most sacred object in the new culture. It's not a map of London or the streets above. It's a map of the shelter itself, of the tunnels and the rooms and the side passages and the new extensions carved by careful hands. It grows each month, updated by the watchers and the builders, who mark each change in chalk and then in paint, transferring it to the master mural. The map is kept in the central gathering space, where meals are shared and decisions made. Children study it daily, learning not just how to navigate the tunnels, but how to think of them as the world, the only world they need. The expansion continues. The second generation is planning new chambers, side rooms, for learning, for sleeping, for storage. They've even talked about digging new tunnels to connect to other shelters, if such shelters exist. There are stories, whispered at night, of distant tunnels filled with people who live the same way. Whether they're true or not doesn't matter anymore. The story is useful. It creates a sense of unity beyond these walls, a vision of a wider tunnel civilization that might someday come together. And you find that idea comforting, even if you know you'll never see it. Your content here, in this life of shared meals, soft breathing, and walls that hum with memory. The tunnel-born are not just surviving, they're thriving, building a system where fear has been replaced by structure, where the darkness is not a threat, but a shelter, a home, a place where human life has learned to adapt completely. The idea of sky and stars has become irrelevant. Lanterns are stars now. The echo of footsteps is music. The smell of oil and stone is the smell of safety. And you've stopped thinking of yourself as someone waiting for anything. You're not waiting. You're living, fully, quietly, completely. Exploring how the shelter's way of life becomes not just a reaction to war, but a permanent form of human existence, passed from generation to generation as the new normal, a civilization beneath the earth that no longer needs the surface at all. Stay with me. The night is almost complete by now. The shelter is no longer a reaction to crisis, it's a civilization. What started as an emergency measure beneath the bombing streets of London has become a fully realized world, self-contained, self-sustaining, and self-understood. Tonight, as you lie beneath your blanket, the gentle drip of tunnel condensation, you realize the journey is complete. There is no longer a before, there is no longer an after. There is only a life below, a life built from darkness, routine, and shared breath. The second generation has taken over entirely now, and the transition was so smooth you barely noticed it happening. The older residents ledger gate. Their words are listened to, yes, but in the way one listens to stories about distant lands. The day-to-day life belongs to the tunnel-born now. They manage the food, they run the schedules, they keep the records, and they sing the rituals. They are not waiting for rescue. They are not hoping for the world to change. The city. Tonight, you watch as the youngest of them leads the evening circle. They sit cross-legged, faces lit by lantern glow, reading from the shelter codex, not as something to memorize, but as something to embody. The rules are spoken like lullabies. The wall holds memory, the lantern holds time, the hand holds trust, the breath holds calm. No one questions these phrases because they've become part of breathing itself. The rituals have expanded, but they're not ceremonies for ceremony's sake. They are the structure of life now. Before each meal, the entire shelter hums softly, a single note that rises and falls together like one organism. Before sleep, each person speaks the name of the person who slept nearest to them the night before, maintaining the chain of connection. Even the games have shifted into education. Children don't play house or pretend to be shopkeepers. They play builder, watcher, echo, ledger. They practice the skills they will need to keep the system alive, to ensure the shelter breathes on beyond them. The murals cover every wall now. Alfie and the others have finished the original history, but the new generation keeps adding layers. The murals aren't just pictures anymore. They're maps of meaning, symbols of shared life. Spiral patterns mark the passing of generations. Handprints line the corridors to show who has contributed. Every pebble offering, every chant, every food rotation is woven into these walls. They are no longer walls. Really, they are the pages of the shelter's living book. The stairwell remains untouched, though it is cleaned regularly, maintained. Like a sacred artifact, the door to the surface is oiled, hinges checked, but no one tries to open it. It's not locked out of fear, it's kept shut out of choice. The world beyond has become a concept, not a destination. Some whisper that there is no longer a city above, that time has passed it by, that the streets are dust, that only the tunnel life remains. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. The belief has its gravity now. The surface is legendary. The tunnels are a fact. You've stopped thinking of yourself as part of the surface world at all. You are a tunnel person now, completely. You no longer dream of sunlight, you dream of lanterns, of soft footfalls in the dark, of the warmth of shared bodies in shared space. You wake and sleep to the same sounds, breathing, humming, whispered counting of supplies, the brush of fabric against stone. It's no longer claustrophobic, it's comforting. The system works. It keeps everyone alive. And more than that, it keeps everyone together. There are no borders in the shelter. No wealth, no poverty. There is balance. Everyone eats. Everyone rests. Everyone works. The structure has replaced conflict. There's no need for punishment, because no one steps outside the system. It would be like stepping outside your heartbeat. It simply doesn't happen. The rituals keep the fear away. The chanting keeps the mind steady. The cycle of tasks and stories keeps the days smooth and safe. There is peace here, not in the absence of hardship, but in the mastery of it. The Tunnelborn have created something unique, a society, without waiting, without hope, without despair, just life, complete and present. Tonight, Echo leads a new ritual, the naming of the walls. Each person is asked to place their hand on a section of stone and speak their name softly, so the shelter remembers them. You do this too, palm pressed against the cold wall, whispering your name into the silence. It feels like planting something, like leaving a piece of yourself in the stone. The ritual is quiet, calm, and shared. No applause, no celebration, just connection. The wall will remember. That's enough. Later, as everyone prepares for sleep, The watchers real, or imagined are, thanked aloud. Children leave small patterns of pebbles near the tunnel mouths, keeping the tradition alive. There's no fear of the unknown here, only respect for the unseen patterns that guide life. The watchers are part of the system now, part of the architecture of belief. And you realize, as you close your eyes, that this is not a story of waiting out a disaster. This is a story of human adaptation, of finding calm in chaos, of building a new culture where the old one could no longer function. The bombs that once drove people underground have long since faded from memory. The war outside, if it still exists, is distant noise. Real life is herein the warmth of bodies sleeping together for safety, in the whisper of names into stone, in the flicker of lanterns that no longer feel like substitutes for light. The shelter isn't an emergency measure anymore. It's a civilization beneath the earth, built on calm, routine, and shared care. It is the way people live now. And perhaps you think, as you drift towards sleep, this was always how people were. Meant to live in circles, in quiet, in connection, in shared spaces, away from the noise of conquest and politics, away from the chaos of the world above. The shelter has become the world, and the world, at last, has become quiet. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories like this, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is for you right now. Sleep well.